Hello everyone, are you ready for another adventure? It's me, Wokey, and I'm back with another fake Grand Order video. It's been a while since the last one, but it's because I've been very busy with work, and I'm also looking to be very busy this week with a lot of other family stuff also going on. But I'm going to try my hardest to release as many videos as I can this week because I have a lot that I've been planning and working on, and I need to release them now before December is over. And so we're going to start with this one because this one's coming up soon, and it's also going to be here in about 2 days. So we're going to be talking today about Oberon and Kogalin, which is their banner is going to be coming up in about 2 days from when this video releases, which should be, this releases on the 10th, so this should be, their banner should be out on the 12th. And we're going to be talking about both of them, because both of them are actually very good units. One better, obviously, than the other, but that doesn't stop Kogalin Caster from being extremely good. So, without further ado, let's get right into it, starting with Kogalin Caster, who is a Storylock Servant. He's a 3-star, and he's also known as the 3-star a lot of new players end up burning, because they do not know that he is story-locked, and therefore a big pain in the ass to actually get multiple copies for. Okay, so he's a caster, like I said, 3-star. Quick. 1 quick, 3 arts, 1 buster, 2 hits on quick, 1 hit on arts, 1 hit on buster, 3 hits on extra. His active skills are the Primeval Rune, which is... Rune? No, man, this is going to distract me forever. Please forgive me if I say it wrong. I know it bothers a lot of people. Upgrades after a strengthening replaces Rune Magic A. The Primeval Rune increases own critical damage for 3 turns, increases debuff resistance for 3 turns, and then charges own MP gauge. 50% crit damage, the debuff resistance is 50%, and the cooldown is 30% on the cooldown of 5. His second skill is Protection from Arrows A, grants self-evasion for 3 attacks, and increases own defense for 3 turns. 18% on defense, because it really shows that he was a day 1 unit, because weird percentages are the name of the game when it comes to early units. Cooldown is 5. His third skill is At the Well EX, which you can only get this after you clear Section 19 of Avalon Lefay, aka Lost Belt 6. It replaces Disengage, which I will show you what Disengage is going to look like before you reach here. At the Well EX, removes own debuffs, recovers own HP, increases own attack for 3 turns, grants self to sacrifice for Idrisil, delayed buff for 1 turn, sacrifice for Idrisil, grants self gut status for 1 time after 1 turn, grants self an on guts activated buff for 1 time after 1 turn when gut status is activated, charges on MP gauge by 80%, and then a 500% chance to sacrifice yourself after 1 turn. This is considered a demerit. You heal 1,500, the attack increase is 30%, and the HP is you revive with is 3,000, and this is on a cooldown of 5. And Disengage, it looks like this before you get this buff, which is remove own debuffs, recover own HP, 1,500, cooldown of 5. His 2 passive skills are Territory Creation B and Divinity B. His third skill is an anti-foreigner attack damage aptitude, and his Noble Phantasm, after a strengthening, is the Wicker Man, the Cage of Scorching Consuming Flames, B+, the Flames of Disaster. Anti-Army Noble Phantasm Buster hits a single time because it's all you need, baby. Increases his own Buster performance by 20% for 3 turns. This activates first. Deals damage to all enemies. It's 400% at MP level 1. And if you get him all the way to MP level 5, it's 600%, and then he reduces their defense for 3 turns. Inflicts burn for 10 turns to them. The defense also does not activate first, so that means they get it afterwards. At charge level 1, it's 10% to the reduction of defense and 300 burn damage. And if you get them all the way to the final overcharge of 500%, it's 30% to defense reduction and 1,500 for burn damage for 10 turns. And that is Kogalin Caster. As you can tell, this skill right here makes him one of, if not the best, caster loopers for Buster. And I would probably put him in the running for in general loopers if we wanted to combine all the 3 elements, and on specifically NA at the time, at this moment. Why? This ability is just fucking nuts, man. So, if you don't know, the basic Buster build is Koyanskaya. And Koyanskaya gives 50% and reduces the charge of a skill by 2. So what you do is on turn 1 is typically either you give him an NP that gives him at least 20%, or more likely, you use this second skill, which is mana loading, which lets you start the battle with NP gauge, the MP gauge charged. And if you get it all the way to level 10, it's 20%. So if you start him at the base level of 20%, give him 30%, he's now at 50. You use the third skill so that you have this skill for the next turn. So you have the 80% for next turn. And then if you're looping specifically, then you throw this out for the vibes. Maybe you just feel like doing it. I don't know. And after you do it, you then use one of the Koyans to give him the other 50% that he's missing. That will lower all his cooldowns so that everything he has will return on in 3 turns. You shoot off your NP. He usually kills whatever's in front of him. And then the next turn, at the end of that turn, Death will trigger. He'll get 80% to his NP. And then you'll go to turn 2. On turn 2, you'll use the Koyan with her 50% charge. And by the way, I also am going to assume that you've also given him the Buster increase. We'll just stick to the basic loop here. You give him the other 50%, he'll have 80% plus 50% to give him the maximum amount. That will mean that now the first skill and the third skill are back, because a turn has passed from when it was at 3 skills, so now all these are on cooldown too. The second Koyan will use her ability, will make it so that all these can come back. You use At the Well EX on turn 2. You don't use the first skill. And then you shoot your NP off not with Oberon, with Caster Ku again, or just Ku. You're now going into the final round, round 3. Before you entered the third round, this will trigger again, causing his guts to trigger, sacrificing himself, giving himself 80% NP. You use the first skill, you give him 30%, and boom, you're good to go. That makes Caster Ku... This is also just with 2 Koyanskayas and with mana loading activate. And depending on the ski choices, the one that I'm specifically built is the one I use, because I use it with the Black Grail to give him the maximum amount of damage possible. And funny enough, I also do use an Oberon for the ultimate form of kill. He doesn't really need it for the most part whenever I do use him, but if you want maximum kill, that's what you go for. But there's plenty of other supports units. If you don't want to go to 10%, maybe you just want to use you can use Waver then. You can use plenty of units that just give 20% to NP, and then swap them out so you have the double Koyan, and you go from there. That makes him an extremely flexible looping servant. One that can be used for maximum damage with the Black Grail, one that can be used with multiple NPs craft essences that you choose to use him with, like either one that starts at 50%, or maybe you're just like at a 30% one. That makes him really good for even, my brain had the hugest brain for it right there. Makes him very good for events, where you can give him event CEs, and you're like, okay, well this event CE, maybe he just gives him 30%. That's more than he needs. 30% plus 30% is 60%. 1 Koyan, that's 110%. You're able to shoot off your NP and have all the other things I mentioned right there as you go for. The negative about Caster Ku is that he's story locked. So remember at the beginning when I said this makes him a kind of a pain in the ass to get multiple copies for? Yeah, he's a pain in the ass to get multiple copies for. And unfortunately, there's a running syndrome that I like to call Burn Ku syndrome, because so many new people burn Caster Ku because they think he's terrible. And I don't know why. Maybe it is because, obviously, I guess another negative that you can say is that to unlock this skill that lets him do all this, you have to get to Lost Belt 6. And that's not easy for a new player. It's definitely a slow burn type of thing. So I guess it is kind of fair to think to a new player, if you saw this, and before even the strengthening, you saw this, you're like, oh my god, I don't know anything about this game, but I can tell you that this guy is straight up trash. Why would I ever use him for this? I'm gonna burn this free unit to save up space. And I guess, like, okay, I guess that kind of makes sense. Unfortunately, you just burned away a fantastic looping unit for the future of the game, but a lot of new players aren't thinking that far ahead. So some new players forget getting 4 copies of Caster Ku. Some of them have to get 5 copies. Another negative is, like I said, because it's so hard, you have to get into, I think, at least Bond 6 to actually unlock mana loading, which shouldn't be the hardest thing in the world, because you can just put him in the back row and slowly build up Bond to let him get it through that way, to get him through servant coins. But the fact that he's a 3 does mean that it is a harder life for him, because even if you get... Mine is NP5, but I would never try to get multiple Servant Coin copies just because it's a pain in the ass. Like, it's hard enough for a 3, but at least with 3s, you get them constantly because they're not limited, so in theory, you should be able to build up enough even though you don't get that much of them. Because he's story locked, it's much harder to get him, and if you're someone who cares about Ku that much that you're like, I need my boy to be 120%, then you're living in a delusion if you think that you can do that. Your best chance is right now, actually. He doesn't get featured on a lot of banners. Trying to summon on story banner for a specific of one unit that is story locked is asking for trouble. It is not the good way to do it. The best way to do it is to summon on a banner that's really good that features him. That's why I got mine to NP5. So he is like the perfect, like, he's the toy in the McDonald's Happy Meal that comes with Oberon. Oberon is the main meal. Everyone's coming here for Oberon, but I'm not going to turn my nose at a perfectly good Caster Ku. It's like finding a really good toy at McDonald's. You love to have them, and you love to have them there. It's like the Hello Kitty Yu-Gi-Oh! Ones that they released a little while ago. So yeah, that's Caster Ku, just to let you know. I just feel like I had to, even I didn't have to spend like the last like 10 minutes talking about it, but I feel like I had to. Just because so many people don't actually know it, and it's crazy to me. But let's go on to a unit that you already knew was good by the time you already clicked on this video. But thank you very much for getting this far, so let's get on with it. Oberon, he's a pretender. He has 2 quicks, 1 arts, 2 buster, 4 hits on quick, 4 hits on arts, 3 hits on buster, 6 hits on extra. And his ascension is locked until further notice, so you have to get to a specific part in Lost Belt 6 if you want to see what this man looks above this one in stage 2. And I will try not to show any of that here, but just know that going in. Curtain of the Night EX is his first skill, which is to increase the party's damage for 3 turns, and then charges the party's MP gauge by 20%. It's 30% MP damage on a cooldown of 5. His second skill is the Morning Lark EX, charges 1 ally's MP gauge, 500% chance to grant them delay debuffs for 1 turn, treated as a buff, demerit. Reduces their MP gauge by 20% after 1 turn, gain crit stars. The NP charge is 50%, and the stars you gain is 20 on a cooldown of 6. His third skill is End of the Dream EX. Get ready for this one. Increases 1 ally's buster performance for 1 turn. Grant him MP damage up boost for 1 turn. The MP damage up boost temporarily multiplies the value of an MP damage up, unstackable. 500% chance to grant him the delay debuff for 1 time. Treated as a buff. Ignores debuff resistance and immunity, unstackable, demerit. At the end of the turn, grant them the effect below. 1000% chance to remove the protagonist correction buffs. 1000% chance to remove their buffs. 500% chance to grant them Eternal Sleep debuff. The Eternal Sleep, similar to Stun. Unlike Stun, this status will ignore debuff resistance and debuff immunity. An affected target will be unable to be selected as a sacrifice. 500% chance to draw attention to enemies to them by 300% for 3 turns. And a 500% chance to seal their order change, meaning you cannot get them off your team until they are dead. You are sending them to die if you do not finish the fight after using this. Buster increase is 50%, and the MP damage boost up is 100% on a cooldown of 8. His passive skills are question mark, and you will know its real name after you clear Avalon Lefay. Obviously, I won't say it here because it might be a spoiler for some. Increases party's debuff success rate by 10% against enemies except foreigner enemies while self is on the field, including the sub-members. 500% chance to reduce the debuff success rate of Merlin allies by 20% while self is on the field, including sub-members. Demerit. When he says Merlin, he means just the man. Lady Avalon does not get this debuff because her name is Lady Avalon, and she's also known as Merlin Prototype, but because she does not have that name and she's pretending to not be Merlin, she does not get the Merlin debuff. It is the most asinine way to ensure that she does not get this debuff. This debuff is crippling, which we'll get to a little bit later when we talk more about him. Territory Creation E-, Item Construction A+, Writing A, A Midsummer Night's Dream EX. Grant self the mental debuff immunity. Mental debuffs are Asleep, Bewitchment, Charm resistance down again. Confusion, the stun when you're confused, Eternal Sleep, Terror, and the stun after you've been terrored, and then grant self curse debuff immunity. And there's a note here: the mental debuff immunity, however, is bypassed by Oberon's third skill. There is absolutely not even Oberon can escape this move. That is how much they want you to be sure that this thing is. There's no way to bypass it. His third skill is an anti-caster attack damage aptitude, because fuck Merlin. His Noble Phantasm, which is in the name of it, stage 1 through 2. The effect stays the same even on stage 3, but obviously because of spoilers I won't show it. La Rhyme Goodfellow, the Tale of Dreams told over yonder. The rank E anti-unit, it is Buster, it hits 4 times. Deals damage to all enemies, removes their offensive buffs, inflicts a sleep status for 1 turn to them, a 500% chance to inflict invincibility for 1 turn to them. This is considered a demerit. The MP at MP level 1, it's 300%, and at MP level 5, it's 500%. Deals extra damage to the lawful alignment at MP level 1. At charge level 1, it's 150%, and if you get it all the way to the final charge level, that's a big old 200%er right there. And that is Oberon. Oberon's really fucking good. If you already know that, but I will gladly tell you some more reasons if you are unaware. Oberon is the best generic supporter in the game, kind of hands down. You would think because his third skill has a Buster buff on it, that you would want to be, oh, he's primarily Buster. And the answer is yes. You want to make sure. I mean, it is nice to use him with a Buster, but the MP damage boost up is actually so insane that this can be used across multiple, for quick and for arts, for additional damage. For quick, he can help him out because a lot of quick units kind of suffer from the ability of not having very much, not being able to get to the full 50% or 70% on turn 3. So getting an additional like 50% to your NP gauge is very effective and can help out a lot of specific quick units. For arts, it's just nice to have more damage on the third skill. They don't really need much NP gain. It's not like he's giving them that much crazy with the NP damage up, but still it's nice. In terms of challenge quest, he can still be used. You would think that because of his specific build that this ability, like for example, losing this by 20% and your unit basically dying after using this, it would make him completely useless, but he doesn't. This does give back 20 crit stars, and if the team is about to die, then this NP gauge reduction doesn't matter. If the unit you're using them with is a Buster, then this MP gauge doesn't really matter. If they're arts, chances are it really doesn't matter. If they're a really good arts unit, then they can just simply get back their NP gain. That's what arts units do best. But of course, it can still hurt in some cases. If they, for example, are not NP2 at least, that means that any overcharge that they get, if they were at 100%, they would go down to 80%. But if they were a little bit over it, then this is just like a little tiny slap in the wrist. It probably hurts quick the most, just because they don't really need crit stars, and they do need the NP gauge increase, but some of the other stuff is kind of devastating. But like I said, arts also could use some crit stars like that, and this third skill is, like I said, so amazing. They went out of their way to design it in such a way that it's foolproof through the future. This is them looking at what Merlin did and saying, how do we make a unit that is so unbelievably powerful that almost any team can make use of him, even though his drawbacks are so strong, you still want to use him, but also does not fully break the game to be that he's the only thing that you need. And the answer is this ability right here. The fact that you can't stack the MP damage up, the boost up, the fact that there's no way of getting rid of this, not even with Oberon's ability to say, I'm immune to that. He says, the fuck you are, and he's not immune to it. I can't actually name a single unit that is actually immune to End of a Dream that doesn't just kill themselves after they use the ability. You can feel free to tell me if there's a way to dodge this. I would actually be very curious to hear if there was, but as far as I'm aware of, once you use this, it's a lock-in. Either you're killing that thing this turn, or you are saying your unit is dying eventually. That is the only way out of this. It's a very powerful skill that can, in looping, it can help you on the third turn, especially if it's a big beefy enemy at the end, to guarantee that you get the kill. In specific challenge quests, I've used this for sure. I've used it on units like, for example, Bargus, where I said, I need you to kill this turn. And this gave her the ability to do so, and I knew that if I failed to do it, it'd basically be the end of the run, but it was still worth it to give it a chance, and I feel like that gives a little bit more excitement to the game when there's a drawback to the powerful ability. That's how I feel like, where it's like, if this was just, oh man, there's like, you know, it's pretty bad, you lose all your buffs, whatever, but no, the fact that this is so, like, no, this thing is dead. There's no way for you to get them back if you use this. I think it adds a lot more drama to some specific fights when you do choose to use him for it. And because he's so strong, you do end up wanting to use him in a lot of cases. At least I have. In my experience, that is, of course, as I can always say. This passive skill was so damaging to Merlin, I'm convinced this is what eventually got them to buff Merlin. Because up until Oberon's release, Merlin had definitely started to age a little bit, but it was in such a way that I was like, well, if you want someone with crit damage, it kind of doesn't matter, because he's your man, he's your Huckleberry. He will always do so much crit damage that it doesn't really matter. It turns out that when you released Oberon, it did actually affect Merlin's play rate enough for them to be like, okay, the Merlin fans have a point. We will buff Merlin just a bit to make him so that his crit damage is insane. And to be fair, it is insane right now. But it was definitely really rough after he released, because you would love to use Merlin and Oberon. It almost feels like a lot of some specific stuff in his kit can help out Merlin a whole bunch, or can cause some really nutty big damage. At least in the way I see it, it would cause it, but they don't want you to run the two together. They straight up do not want you to run them together. So this is devastating. The fact that this buff success rate lowers it by 20% is enough to make you not want to run them together at all. And it is, again, like I said, really funny that this only applies to Merlin, because that was the unit that they were afraid of, and it does not apply to Lady Avalon at all. His Noble Phantasm is very good for different reasons. You can actually loop with it. I've done it with the Black Grail because of his ability to give himself 70% NP, and the fact that you will get this back, because this is on a cooldown of 5 and this is on a cooldown of 6. You can use this on turn 1 and then a Koyanskaya to make this go down by... actually, you could probably just use this, actually. You can use both of these and a Koyan, because it'll be fine. I just realized with regards to the Grail. Actually, can you do it that way? Yes, you can do it that way. You would use those two, then you would bring in another support over the one Koyan. Use Koyan or the other support for the additional... use both of them for the additional... Actually, no, that doesn't work out that way. It does not work out the way I'm planning out it. There is a way to... One moment. Okay. Here's the method I'll do it. I was like trying to be like, wait a minute, how the hell did I do it? I had to go look at my Oberon specifically. That's why I had to pause. Okay, the reason is because mine has this one, mana loading. So 20% here with this and this will give him 90%. And then you use a waiver on turn 1 or to give him the 10%, and you use a Koyan because he has the Black Grail. It shouldn't be too bad to take out in the first wave. You use your NP, you shoot it off that way, you bring in Koyan, you use Koyan to give him 50%, and then you use the second Koyan, you swap into the second Koyan to give him the additional 50% and the additional Buster buff. That will give him 100%, and that will let him have all these skills back on the first and second skill, return to him on turn 3, shoot off your NP, go to turn 3, use the first skill and the second skill, and then you use Waver to give him the last of his 40% there. Use the third skill, bust it off, and then you're good to go. And this is with using a Black Grail. The method I mentioned is obviously a little bit obtuse and is not the way you want to use Oberon. Not many people use him for looping, as you can tell by the way that I straight up forgot, because I was like, wait a minute, I know it's possible because I did it for jokes, and I did it for jokes because there was a specific node that had Saber, Lancer, and Archers in it, and I was like, you know who would be a sick cleanup for this? Oberon. Let me use my Oberon. He's been using the background so much, maybe it's finally his time to shine with my Black Grail. And he did a perfectly fine job with it, but obviously if you want maximum damage, you prefer to use another unit. But for someone out there who just wants to use wacky, silly teams for a bit, then you can definitely do it that way. Next, maybe it'd be... wondering if I could just release a quick video doing something like that. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But anyway, And then if you want to use this for non-looping purposes, it's actually pretty nice, like in a challenge quest. The reason is that you would think that giving your opponent invincibility for a turn is awful, but giving them the asleep status is basically like saying, I'm going to stun you. So he can come in, remove all their offensive buffs that they've built up, get rid of their quick performance, their attack up, their crit up, whatever. Whatever they have, their invincibility up, anything, doesn't matter. As long as it's an offensive buff, he removes them all. He makes them go to sleep, and because a sleep triggers if you damage them, if you don't know how a sleep works, it's that sleep is basically stun unless you hit the enemy. If you hit the enemy, it wakes them up from their stun. But because he gives them invincibility, they don't wake up. You can hit them all you want, but because you're not dealing any damage to them, it doesn't wake them up from their sleep. So they will stay asleep for the entire thing, and you're good to go from that point on. So you can kind of use them as like, okay, I'm going to deal a little bit damage, remove their defensive buffs, and then basically they're stunned for the turn, and maybe I can hopefully have a good follow-up for next turn that makes me not die, which is good enough, I would say. For a unit that is already so good in so many aspects, I'll take him having a, you know, something that when it comes up, you're like, oh, this is a very nice NP. Thank you very much, my guy, Oberon. I keep wanting to accidentally call him Merlin, and I'm fighting every instance of it. So that is Oberon. Fantastic, 100% worth having. Now, the question now that remains is, do you have it in you to summon for Oberon? If you're a new player and you're like, well, what happens if I miss Oberon? Am I cooked? Is every single guide that I ever see, every YouTuber that I look up has Oberon somewhere in there? Which is not true. I'm sure there's plenty of them that don't have them in there. I'm just saying, for this hypothetical screaming child, this is what I'm doing. Also, they're probably not a child because they're playing a gacha and you have to at least be 14 years of age. And I've seen no demographics on my channel, so I know that there's not that many children playing the game. But anyway, they're saying all that. What happens next? The answer is very simple. It is still possible to play the game without Oberon. Oberon just kind of just makes your life easier. It's not like a Merlin situation when the Merlin meta was around. It definitely felt like, because Merlin was changing the game so much, we didn't used to have break bars when Merlin first came out. That motherfucker is the reason we have break bars. He changed the game so fundamentally. That's why they're so scared of like anything with him, which is why they made sure that Oberon could not be run with him effectively. Is that he just changed the meta so much. All Oberon did was introduce the ability to have like a really powerful dude as a quick finisher on fights that you in theory will still be able to handle without him. Like, for example, a lot of the 90++ ones is a case of it made when I used Oberon, it made my life a whole lot easier. When I didn't use Oberon, my life was much harder, and I had to think of team builds where I was like, ah, shit, well, I'm pretty sure this works out if I get the perfect RNG and it kind of works out, and we're good to go. And you know, it worked out kind of. But when I had Oberon, I was just like, oh, I can just use Oberon. This makes it so much easier. And that's the way that I think you should look at Oberon, is that your life will be easier if you have Oberon, so it's good to have Oberon. But if you don't get Oberon or you miss him, it's fine. He'll come back, and he comes back often because he's a fan-favorite character. His next banner that comes back is, I can look it up right here, is during Lost Belt 6 Summer, which is a big bummer if you were planning to go for some of the ones during there. Nope, wrong one. There we go. Yeah, he comes up right here. He releases day and date. So this is your next chance. If you don't have the ability to go for him right now, or you fail to get him, this is your next bet. The problem is that, as you can see here, Oberon, of course. With with 2 story lock knights, that sounds pretty good. The problem is this is what he's keeping company with. We got Berserk, Summer Castoria, Suzuki Gozen, and the Suzuki Gozen just here vibing out. Chloe, who is also a fantastic support unit that I'm looking forward to getting in the future, and then also Melusane, Summer Melusane, Summer Trico, and then Summer Bargus. So. And then, of course, my boy Tez up in the mix as well. Can't wait for more Tez. So you can see here, it's going to be kind of rough. If you choose not to go for him, know that you in theory will have more sync quartz because you'll be around anniversary time. But the reason you have all those sync quartz is because you likely were going to summon on Lost World 6 Summer. So you'll be entering a new kind of game if you choose to ignore him now and go for him later. if anything, if you have any tickets, some spare stuff that you can spare, it's worth trying to go for him just to see. But I think the best method of getting him is to do the thing I mentioned where, like, you have to save up, have enough for potential pity, and always know that, okay, no matter what, I'm saving up for him, and then use it all on him when you go for him. And if you reach pity, it's a bummer, but you have your guy. But if you don't reach pity, you have stuff that goes overboard that you can use on other banners and things like that. That's a little bit more better for preparing for the future, but that's just my advice on that. I can also understand that for a lot of players, they want it now. It's like that bit from Atlanta. I need money today, not for later. I need to eat now is what the feeling is, and it's like it's understandable. So I wish you the best of luck if you're going for him. Another thing to kind of mention, just because it's a big pain in the ass that they did it this way, in Japan, which I can show hopefully right here if I remember to not. Yep, okay. In Japan, when he released, it was... I have to go all the way down here. God, all these changes. When he originally released, he released on the 16th. And then 3 days later, they released Koyanskaya. So, that means Koyanskaya is not that far behind him. And if you're someone who's looking specifically to build for Buster, this is a no good answers here. You need, for some units, you do kind of need Oberon. It's the ones that give 30%, unless you're like doing a very specific CE build to do it without him, which makes it possible, but he does definitely make your life a whole lot easier. And because, like I said, he is Buster focused, he does buff up a lot of your dudes to make it much easier for you. But then you also need Koyan, because as I explained here, like when I was looping with Oberon and I was doing a bunch of other stuff, I was mentioning Koyanskaya a whole bunch. And even the method I mentioned with Ku, it's funny enough, it is possible to grind with double Oberon, but it won't reach the same damage as double Koyanskaya. So I think it ends up being a unit that you kind of want both of, for sure. In terms of which one to go for, I think the better unit is definitely Oberon, and that's the one that I think most people should be going for. But the nicer one to look at is also a matter of perspective, and I think for that, it likely comes down to Koyanskaya. And I feel like for a lot of players, especially on this one, they would probably go Koyanskaya. But trust me on this one, Oberon is definitely worth going for first. You're just going to have to believe me on this, bro. And even then, if you get Koyanskaya, it's weird because it's like hand in hand. If you get Koyanskaya, you want Oberon next. And if you get Oberon, you want the other supports to be used with him. There's no ending on what you want and what you need after you get him. There's no easy choices. All you can do is summon and hope for the best. And I wish you the best of luck on this one, because it's rough. Especially for the people who were planning on summoning an Oberon and lost everything to Melusane. I've read their comments. I've been unable to respond as much as I'd like to. But I am still reading everything, and I've definitely read reports of people going like, man, Melusane literally killed me, and I was planning on Oberon, and now I have nothing for Oberon. And yeah, it's fucked up that the way that they released this. It probably would have been better for a lot of people to have Oberon first, up here, Muramasa break, and then Melusane, I think, and then have her with Koyanskaya. But either way, it's a precarious situation. It's not good. It's never a good time to summon on this game. It's gambling at the end of the day. And that's the end of the video, everyone. Thank you very much for watching before I went into a rant about gambling. Thank you very much for watching, especially if you made it all the way to the end, especially because you're here listening to me talk about a unit that you already know is good. So if you made it all this way, thank you very much. You can show support by leaving a like. Comment about how you're currently feeling, if you're going for Oberon, if you're skipping Oberon. Thankfully, you only really ever need one copy of Oberon. Multiple NTP copies is probably nice if you're using them for looping, but I've never cared that much about it, as you can tell by the fact that I forgot how to do it. I use them with the Black Girl, and I'm like, that's good enough for good silly things, but for the most part, I don't need them for that. It's fine. If I want to get an MP5 DPS, I'd probably go for someone like Cuckoo, who's coming up after New Year's, or Summer Ibuki, which I already have, or hell, even Melusane, because she would be amazing at MP5, just killing absolutely everything in sight. Likely even a lot of sabers based off of the one response I got. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure Melusane kills those as well at MP5. And it's like, yeah, that's the power of MP5 for you. Very good. But anyway, that's the end, everyone. Thanks again. Best of luck if you're summoning for Oberon. And I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow with another video talking about the GSSR. I've been planning it for such a long time and looking over the banners coming up. All these videos are going to release in a quick succession because I'm like, ah, shit, these have to come out before December ends. Till next time, peace. Where's the stop record button? There it is.